Welcome to our CabinetVision PhotoVision tutorial. Today I'll explain all the factors that impact the end result of quality for your PhotoVision renders. Here I am using CabinetVision version 9 Solid Drafter and would like to remind you that at any time throughout this tutorial you can pause, practice or replay whenever you feel the need. PhotoVision allows you to produce either realistic or artistic images of a scene you have drawn in CabinetVision and can be accessed by selecting the tab here when in the 3D view of a job. There are two different groups within PhotoVision, Render and Sketch. The advanced and architectural options in the Render group will create realistic PhotoVision renders. The remaining options in the Sketch group will create artistic PhotoVision renders. Today, I will only be using the architectural render option as it will generate the most realistic image by taking all material and texture selections together with the lighting and shadow settings, and then it will add reflections to the scene. So first, let's look at the material selections of a job and the important part they play in PhotoVision. It is important you understand what materials you are using in your job based on what material schedules you have selected in your job or room properties. Once you know what materials are being used to build your cabinets, doors, benchtops, etc., then you can investigate the settings on each via the Material Manager. Even your room as a whole has a schedule that is being used to allocate materials to the walls, floors, ceilings, etc. Most materials allocated to the room via the room schedule are system materials and can be found in the miscellaneous category of the Material Manager. For assistance in understanding material schedules, see the tutorial on our website. The settings applied on your individual materials that directly affect PhotoVision are the finishes, the finish types, and the textures. Finishes are basically solid colours. You can customise the system finishes, but there is rarely, if ever, a need to do so. If you apply a finish to the material here in the Material Manager, it will overwrite any selections made in the room, which means any time you want to change the material colour, you will need to close out of a job and return to the Material Manager to do so. It is recommended for materials with generic names like Colour 1 or Colour 2 that the finish selections are set as automatic, and then the colours can be efficiently chosen in a room from the Properties Finishes tab or from the sidebar when in 3D view. Finishes will always be overwritten by textures at the PhotoVision stage of a job. Therefore, if you want the finish colour to remain in PhotoVision, you must ensure there is no texture applied to that same material. The finish types applied to materials are extremely important and can impact the colour or texture on a material greatly. Finish types are used to determine how you want the surface of a material to react in PhotoVision. For example, is it glossy or matte? Is there any reflection, shine or transparency? If a finish type on a particular material has been set up to absorb a lot of light, then this could mean that when you apply a colour to that same material, the finish type could in actual fact fade out some of that colour. Or if a dull finish type is applied to a material when a light colour such as white is used on that material, it could appear greyish. Here are some examples to demonstrate just how the finish type on a material can affect the finish colour that is applied to that material. I have three materials, CP1, CP2, CP3. No finish colours are applied here, so I can select them on the fly whilst in a job, and I have applied a different finish type to each of these materials. CP1 has a matte finish type, CP2 has a gloss finish type, and CP3 has a bright white finish type. Now, when I'm in a job, I have three cabinets, each using the material types just discussed. If I apply a dark colour such as navy blue, the matte finish type gives me a true representation of the colour. The gloss finish type changes and lightens the colour a little because it has been set up to reflect the other surfaces in the room, which all have other colours on them, and therefore this will impact how the navy blue looks. The bright white finish type will change the colour even more because this particular finish type has been set up to absorb a lot of light and therefore will brighten the colour of the navy so that it appears a few shades lighter. Now, if I apply a lighter colour such as white, the matte finish can appear a little dull or grey depending on the lighting in the rest of the room. The gloss finish generally will vary because it is reflecting other colours and surfaces. The bright white finish, however, will show a very white colour, even with minimal room lighting, because of its settings to keep that material surface bright. Finish types cannot be changed whilst in a room. They can only be set here in the Material Manager. However, if they are set correctly to begin with, and you have a good understanding of your material names and their properties, then they will rarely need to be changed. The setup of finish types can also be customised here in the Material Manager. It is not recommended that you ever adjust the settings on existing system finish types, but if you do wish to create new ones to use them, this can be done here by selecting New. Finally, the textures are the last setting here in the Material Manager that affect your PhotoVision render. Textures are basically patterns or images. However, they are not limited and can be any JPEG or bitmap image, such as your company logo, an appliance image, or even a photograph of something to imitate artwork, for example. If you apply a texture to the material here in the Material Manager, it will overwrite any selections made in the room, which means any time you want to change the material texture, you will need to close out of a job and return to the Material Manager to do so. As we discussed with the finish colours, it is recommended for materials with generic names like Colour 1 or Colour 2 that the texture selections are set as blank, and then the textures can be efficiently chosen in a room from the Properties and Finishes tab or from the sidebar when in 3D view. Textures will only be visible on a material if you are viewing the scene in texture mode or when you generate a full architectural render. Textures can be used in two ways. Either as a black and white image that will combine with and show through the finish colour on a material when rendered, or as a complete image that contains the colour and pattern and overrides the finish colour on a material when rendered. This option is selected on the properties of a texture when importing it into Cabinet Vision. To import your own texture, firstly, a bitmap or JPEG file of the texture needs to be saved onto your computer. Once you have a saved copy of the image, you can import the image into Cabinet Vision. From the Material Manager, you can open the setup of the texture catalogue. Select the category from the list that you want to add the new texture to and select to import a new texture. Click on the Load Image icon to retrieve the image you require. Give the texture a name and a description. Select Tile if you want the image to repeat on the surface it will be applied to. If this option is selected, then you will need to enter a world width and height, and the image will repeat at this size. Without checking the tile box, the texture will appear one time and may be stretched out of proportion depending on the original size of the image you're importing and the size of the surface you will be applying it to. If you do need to enter a world width and height size, it should represent millimeters in a real-world dimension in your plan. If the image is of an actual tile to be used on the floor or wall, the image itself should have a slight outline to it before it's imported, so that the grout is displayed when the texture repeats itself in your render. The decal option must be selected if you do not want this image to show through the finish colour on a material. Here I have imported the same texture twice, a light streaky pattern. I have imported it once with the decal option selected and once without the decal option selected to show you the difference. When comparing the two in the room, you can see that the texture that did not have the decal option selected will blend with the finish colour on the material, and therefore the end result of that texture when rendered will be altered. The texture that did have the decal option selected will display a true representation of the image I imported, regardless of what, if any, finish colour is applied to the same surface. You must experiment with the resolution and scale of the images you choose to import and use in Cabinet Vision, as the quality of textures you import will be reflected in your PhotoVision renders. So we now know how materials in a room get their colours and/or patterns, via the Finishes or Textures options. If these settings have not been applied at the system level in the Material Manager, then you can freely select them at the start of the room on the Properties Finish tab, and then change them as needed via the sidebar options in the 3D view. If you need to apply feature colours or textures to individual cabinets or objects, this can be done at the cabinet level by going to the Cabinet Properties and then the Finish tab. Any selections made here at the cabinet level will also override any colours or textures applied at the room level in 3D view. If the object is not a cabinet, you may be able to change the entire material of the object to achieve a different finish or texture, or even apply a finish or texture directly to the object, but this depends on the level of solid you are using. The next thing to impact your PhotoVision renders after the finishes, textures and finish types is the lighting. The Lights button is available on the sidebar when in 3D view. Selecting the Lights button will give you an overhead view of the current design with the automatic light schedule. The automatic lighting schedule places at least 3 lights in every room, and often a lot more depending on the layout of your design. There will always be an ambient light, which is not displayed by a coloured dot and is accessed by clicking anywhere in the white area of the viewing port. The ambient light will evenly light every surface in the scene. It is not a specific beam of light. A headlight, which is displayed as a green square, will always shine from your viewing perspective. And a directional light, which appears as a blue circle and projects a wide parallel beam of light in the direction that the leader is pointing. The additional lights that the system may generate in the automatic light schedule are placed around the room automatically depending on wall locations, wall lengths and objects on the walls. These may include more directional lights, the blue dots, or point lights which appear as orange dots and act as a ball of light projecting light in all directions, or perhaps spotlights that appear as a red dot and project a cone-shaped beam of light. Before editing the room lighting, it is recommended that you switch between the automatic and standard light schedules to compare the result, remembering that you must do a full architectural render to view it properly. Then you can select either the automatic or standard schedule, take a copy of it by hitting this save icon, give it a new name, and then make changes to that new schedule, or add or remove lights to it as required. If you click on a light in the viewing port, the properties of that light appear below for you to modify. To move a light around a room, simply drag it. To change the direction of a beam, simply drag the end of the leader or type in a new angle here. To change the direction of a beam vertically, select this icon once you have clicked in the angle field to open a cross-section view of the beam angle on a vertical plane. If you are adding light to brighten up an area as opposed to creating realistic effects, you should turn off the shadow option. Changes made in lighting schedules are only saved and relevant to the room they are created in. A new automatic schedule will be generated for every new room based on each individual room layout. You also have the ability to preset the strength of your default lighting in your system preferences. This can be helpful if you find you are always modifying the same settings generated from the automatic light schedules. However, it should only be adjusted here after you have experimented within a variety of rooms and you have gained a good understanding of the lighting. To add feature lighting to a room, this can be done in floor plan or elevation view for more accuracy. Right-click in the workspace and select Add Light. Select the appropriate light type and set its properties according to the result you are trying to achieve. It can sometimes help to be quite dramatic in these settings when you are first learning about lighting, as this will give you a very obvious visual when you do the PhotoVision render. The properties of the light can then be adjusted more realistically once you can see where the light beam is falling and what impact it is having on your design. You can copy and paste lighting added in your plan views by using the clipboard. However, you must remember to return off a light once you have finished with it to be able to use your cursor to select the next one. You will also find that there are properties you can preset that will affect your PhotoVision renders. To access the 3D View property options, while you are in 3D View, right-click on your screen, select Properties. There can be up to 11 tabs on the View Properties screen depending on the level of solid you are using, but not all of these tabs affect PhotoVision. The tabs that do affect PhotoVision are highlighted with this symbol and include PhotoVision, QuickTime VR, Global Illumination, Ray Trace, Image, Background and Sketch. It is important to understand that these properties have already been tested and preset for you at a good standard, and you may not even need to change them. The PhotoVision tab has some general rendering options to help improve the quality of your render. However, adjusting these settings may not create any drastic changes to the naked eye. The shadow quality slider improves the quality of soft shadows. If you see subtle black bands on wall and floor surfaces, increasing shadow quality can remove them. Increasing shadow quality uses more system resources, so only increase it if you are getting the black band effect. The wood grain colour options allow you to fine-tune the colour of your wood grain when you are using wood grain textures that blend with the room finish colour. By default, PhotoVision will render the entire viewport and will not clip out foreground objects like the normal colour render does. By enabling this clip view switch, PhotoVision renders will be clipped just like the normal colour render. Enabling the option Re-render on lights, finish or texture change will cause Solid to immediately re-render your scene when you change a light, finish or texture, which can be time-consuming. The options on the QuickTime VR tab allow you to customize preferences that come into play when you want to create a QuickTime movie of your design. A QuickTime movie file basically consists of a series of still photos, each taken at a specific degree of rotation, which when combined make a movie. There will be a separate tutorial specifically for this topic. Global illumination provides the ability to simulate the way in which real-world scenes are lit, not only by direct light, but also by diffused light which bounces off directly lit surfaces onto other areas of the scene. Rather than typical ray trace rendering, which is what the full architectural render option generates by default, global illumination utilises radiosity rendering. The disadvantage of global illumination over normal ray trace rendering is that it can be costly in terms of computer time and memory. It is hard to give definite rules, but a fully converged radiosity solution, i.e. all the light energy in a scene is completely accounted for, would typically be a lot more costly to evaluate than a single ray traced image. Of course, this all depends on your quality settings. By default, the settings are set to the best balance of speed versus quality. With the radiosity pre-process option enabled, you will get the maximum lighting effect. The pre-process calculates realistic lighting bounced around a scene, which is more effective in closed scenes, i.e. rooms with a floor, a ceiling, and all walls joined to enclose the room. You should disable this option for open scenes, rooms with no floors, ceilings or walls. Open scenes will receive very little benefit with this option turned on. The render quality controls the render quality of a scene. The higher the setting, the more time is spent calculating the render, giving a higher quality. Illumination quality controls the illumination quality of a scene. The higher the setting, the more time is spent calculating the illumination of the scene, giving a higher quality. Brightening controls the general brightness of a scene, and the small part size sets the size of objects global illumination can ignore. Set to 0 if all objects should be rendered. The Ray Trace tab is for settings that only affect ray trace renders, such as the full architectural option. Using realistic reflections can greatly improve the look and professionalism of your reflections on renderings. However, ray tracing takes considerably longer than a full render, and overusing it can leave you with strange looking results. To keep from creating reflections you don't want or need, instead of changing the finish type via the Material Manager, you can turn reflections on and off here based on category. Shadows can be ray traced the same way as reflections, producing sharp, detailed shadows. To use ray trace shadows, this switch must be enabled and the light must have its beam softness set to 0. By default, ray traced reflections and sharp shadows are not smoothed. In most cases, this will not be noticeable. If you are rendering a scene with highly reflective materials and ray traced shadows, you may want to turn on smoothing. This will increase the rendering time by up to 4 times. Use it only if you really need it. The Image tab sets what pixel resolution the image will be rendered out at when you use the full render to file or ray trace to file options. You can use the preset image sizes or set your own. The higher the resolution, the longer it will take to render the image. This will only be noticeable when you save the render to a file. The Background tab allows you to set a preferred background colour, a gradient colour, or apply an image to render behind your scenes. The Sketch tab allows you to set custom properties for each of the 12 sketch options. Lastly, here are a few final tips to assist with producing great quality renders. They include: ensure the edge banding matches your panels, centering your room, apply images for views outside of windows, apply images of appliances to the appliance object face, the camera views, showing or hiding walls, and adding 3D objects. If you find that the edge band detail in your designs is a different colour to your panels, then you must ensure that in the Material Manager, the properties set on the edging that is being used in the room are consistent with the properties set on the panel stock that is being used in the room. Centering your room from your floor plan view will ensure that your design is drawn perfectly around your page centre. The page centre always exists but is only visible when your grid is displayed. You can see it here shown by the blue crosshair lines. This is important when it comes to rotating your design smoothly in 3D view to get the best angles. A design that has not been centred on your page may have difficulty producing a good view from a certain angle. There are a few different ways you can apply images to your design to achieve a view outside of a window. Firstly, you can right-click on the window, go to the properties and add a scene. However, depending on what the image is, it can often be squeezed into the window size and not look very realistic. An alternative way is to add the image of the view to the background settings in 3D properties. But if this still doesn't give you the right effect, an extra wall can be drawn outside of your design to extend past any windows. Then, if you add an image of a view as a texture to the face of that individual wall, you will generally achieve a great result. Remember that the glass layer in a window may alter the appearance of any images or scenes through the window, so this can be deleted for a clearer view if you prefer. Rather than having a lot of fancy appliances imported into your furnishings catalogue, you can stick with the basic ones and simply apply different photos or images of specific appliances to the face of the actual appliance object to achieve more detailed appliance graphics. Make sure that the appliance image you choose is the flat front-on view of the appliance with no outline before you import it. You may also wish to use the Save Camera option when rotating your design, as this enables you to get snapshots from the exact same viewpoint when comparing changes in your design. Right-click on the page and select Save Camera. Give the camera a view name and select OK. To retrieve and use the saved camera view, select the view from the drop-down menu. To continuously scroll through your views, you can use the previous saved and next saved arrows. The Edit Cameras option allows you to delete any views you no longer need in the job. The Lock Orientation option keeps you from accidentally rotating your view. Next, if walls are obstructing your vision from a particular angle when in 3D view, you are able to show or hide the walls for a better view. Simply enable or disable the walls in the ShowHide Wall list. From any view, right-click and select ShowHide Walls, then uncheck the boxes from any of the walls you want to hide. This option only applies to viewing walls in 3D. The walls will still be visible in floor and elevation plans. Our final tip in creating a realistic render is to complete your design with accessories such as furniture, homewares or fittings. These items are classified as 3D objects and can be found in the furnishings category within your catalogue. Furnishings and 3D objects are placed in your room just like we place cabinets via the drag and drop method. It may take a while to familiarise yourself with the entire contents of the furnishings catalogue, but once you find a few key items that work well in your designs, it can make a world of difference to your presentation by not only adding character and bringing your drawing to life, but they also can indirectly communicate proportion and sizing to your clients, as this example does here, showing that the breakfast bar will only comfortably fit 3 bar stools. Depending on the level of solid you are using, you may even be able to import your own 3D objects into your catalogue using the Google SketchUp option. Now that you have had a good overview of the combining factors that impact the quality of our PhotoVision renders, an important step to remember is understanding when you may be required to update your job materials. If you have made changes to material settings at the system level in the Material Manager, and then you open an old job that was saved with old settings, you must go to Utilities, Update Job, and select the Materials option so that the job will refresh and read to the updated selections in your Material Manager. That concludes our Cabinet Vision PhotoVision tutorial. I hope you have found this recording useful and now have a better understanding of all the factors that come together to impact the end result of your PhotoVision render. Thank you for watching.